Good evening. I'd like to bring the May 22nd Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. And tonight, we are going to start off with Tim Parody, who's going to introduce to us some information about the participation in a group net metering project.
Yep, thanks, Bibi. I have the easy part here because I just get to introduce Mark Bollinger, who is the Director of Projects and Programs for Community Power Coalition in New Hampshire. So he's working, I'm on the Energy Committee, I should have said, so we're working with CPCNH on this project, and Mark knows a lot more about it than I do in terms of the details, so I thought it made sense for him to walk through a few slides, and then we can take questions.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and good evening, everyone. As Tim said, my name is Mark Bollinger. I'm the Director of Projects and Programs at the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, which some of you may recognize as the supplier of electricity to New London Community Power. Let's see if we can go to the next slide. As Tim mentioned, I'm here to talk about New London's potential participation in the Poverty Plains Solar Project, which is a 5-megawatt project sited on a cleared gravel pit just off of I-89 northbound between exits 7 and 8. The picture there shows what the site currently looks like from the air. The site has been mostly cleared as part of the gravel pit operations, and the land is degraded, which means that from an environmental perspective, this is a pretty ideal site for a ground-mounted solar array. The project is being developed and will be owned and operated by Encore Renewable Energy, which is a well-respected developer out of Burlington, Vermont. Importantly, the project is shovel-ready, meaning it's already secured, signed interconnection agreements with Eversource and has the permits that it needs to move towards construction and eventual operation as well. And that is a bit of a rarity in New Hampshire, particularly for a project of this size. So this is a somewhat unique opportunity. You can see that the projected first-year generation from the project is 8.8 million kilowatt hours starting next summer, mid-2026. And that is the amount of generation that we will be looking to subscribe. So if New London decides to proceed with this, you'll make up just a small portion of that total 8.8 million kilowatt hours. While Encore will own and operate the project, CPCNH will serve as the administrator of the group net metering aspects of this project. And if we go to the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about what group net metering is, in case you're not familiar. So group net metering is how New Hampshire supports what is kind of generically known as community solar. So this is a regulatory program that's run by the New Hampshire Department of Energy, and at a minimum it requires 2 entities. First, a group host, which owns and operates the project, and then you also need 1 or more group members who subscribe to a portion of the project's output. So New London, in this case, would be one of the group members of the project. For projects of this size, between 1 and 5 megawatts, all group members must be municipal accounts, and they must also be located in the same utility service territory as the host project. So in this case, that's Eversource, so that's not a problem. It's important to note, though, that group members do not need to receive or take electricity supply from Eversource. You can instead stay with New London Community Power, or you can go with some other competitive provider, such as Constellation New Energy or NextEra or whoever, really. If we go to the next slide. So to understand how this works, it's important to sort of recognize that the group host is really dependent on and needs member load or subscriber load in order to be able to access the net metering credit. The net metering credit, it tends to be a fairly lucrative form of compensation, higher than what projects like this would be able to earn in the wholesale power market. So most developers are very keen to bring in a sufficient number of subscribers to be able to access the net metering credit. And in order to entice those members to subscribe, the host typically shares a portion of the net metering credit with the group members. And in the case of Poverty Plains, the project will share 12.5% of the net metering credit. That credit is currently 8.929 cents per kilowatt hour. And so 12.5% of that works out to about 1.1 cent per kilowatt hour that group members would earn for each kilowatt hour that they subscribe to the project. Importantly, there's no cost to subscribe. You really just need to pledge your load to the project, and in exchange you will receive 12.5% of the net metering credit. That compensation will be distributed on each account's electricity bill through what's known as on-bill crediting. So every month, Eversource will calculate how much you are owed under the contractual terms of the agreement, and they will simply credit your electricity bill for that amount. So it's nice and clean that way. If we go to the next slide. So New London's Energy Committee has already done a great job of kind of culling through New London's municipal accounts, and they arrived at the 9 that you see here that seem like they're eligible to participate. If you look at the bottom line of the table, these 9 accounts total about 440,000 kilowatt hours of usage per year. That works out to almost 4.5% of that 8.8 million kilowatt hours that is projected, that the project projects to generate in its first year. And then if you multiply that 4.4% times 12.5%, you get 0.55%. That is New London's, or that would be New London's share of the net metering credit. And then if you look down at the bottom of this slide, if you multiply that 0.55% times the projected 8.8 million kilowatt hours, and then multiply that times the current net metering rate of 8.929 cents, what you see is that these 9 accounts in aggregate would save about $4,000 per year by enrolling or subscribing to this project. Next slide, please. So if this sounds like a good idea, then I guess the next steps would potentially be the Board of Selectmen and or Town Administrator. I'm not exactly sure how it works in New London, would, I think, need to approve participation of these 9 accounts. And at that point, we would ask New London to sign a contract, which we call the Group Net Metering Membership Agreement. It's a pretty basic contract, 5 or 6 pages. I understand that you probably want to have legal counsel review that, and that's fine. I will say that we are hoping to kind of wrap up the subscription phase of the project by mid-June, and so if you do decide that you want to proceed and you're hoping for legal review, we would just ask that you try and expedite that over the next couple of weeks if that's possible. A few other things to note. The contract itself does run through 2040, and that is simply a reflection of the fact that net metering is on the books in New Hampshire through 2040, but sunsets after that. So we extended the contract through 2040, but if you need to get out for any reason, either entirely or if you need to withdraw just certain accounts, you can do that without penalty simply by providing us with 12 months notice. So it's effectively a 1-year contract that, if not canceled, just runs through 2040. Also important to note that subscribers cannot participate in more than one of these types of projects, and I think we're okay there with these 9 accounts that have been identified. But that is something that we would probably want to just double check to make sure. And then I guess the final thing to point out is that the net metering credit, which currently stands at 8.929 cents, does change every 6 months in lockstep with Eversource's default supply rate. So come August 1st, that rate could go higher or lower, and that will obviously affect that the dollar amount that you would save by participating. So I provided that example dollar amount of about $4,000. That could go higher or lower in the future. I listed a website here where we've provided more information on not only this project, but group net metering in general, if you're interested. And I've also provided my email address if anyone would like to follow up with questions after tonight. And with that, maybe I'll just stop talking and see if there are any questions right now.
Are these 9 accounts currently on the community power? Okay. So by moving these to that, would that have any effect?
Yeah, that's okay. It's the group net metering arrangement is wholly independent of electricity supply, so you can move them wherever you want and still participate in this if you'd like.
And I guess my question is, how does the Energy Committee feel about this?
Thanks, Mark. And thanks, BB. Yeah, we're in favor of this. We looked at these accounts, and we think it makes sense for a number of reasons, the potential for saving money, as he outlined, but also because the source of the energy being renewable, then that would help the town move toward its renewable energy goals as well. So we think it's a cliche, but we think it's kind of a win-win in that regard.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Janet, do you have any questions?
I do. Is Sunapee does receive their supply from Eversource? It's not a different supplier? Because we have a sewer pump station in George's Mills, which is in Sunapee.
Okay, was that one of the 9 accounts listed?
It's listed, yeah.
It is? Okay. I think, I'm not quite sure of Sunapee's status. I think I heard that they did recently join the coalition, but actually that shouldn't matter. I think they are Eversource, if that's
Okay.
what you're asking.
Well, it's a different county, that's why. It's Sullivan
Yeah.
County as opposed to Merrimack.
Okay, so that's worth chasing down. I think it's okay, but yeah, we should double check that.
And what other towns are participating in this?
In this project, so we're currently in the subscription phase, but we have, I would say, 8 or 9 towns that have expressed interest, including Dover, Barrington, Northumberland. So they're kind of all over the state. We have, let's see, what other ones are we talking to? Hopkinton. Oh man, they're escaping me right now. But we've got, like I said, I think I would say between 8 and 10 towns that have committed. Some have already signed, some have given verbal commitments, but we're trying to get it all wrapped up in the next couple of weeks.
If more towns join, will that bring the rate down even lower?
No.
It doesn't have any impact?
Yeah,
Okay.
it has no impact, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
To be clear, Encore Renewable Energy out of Burlington, that's a for-profit corporation?
They're a B corporation, which I think means I don't know if that means for-profit or nonprofit, but yeah, I'm not sure about that. My guess is they're for-profit. They're a renewable energy developer, so they must be for-profit, yeah. And I believe this is their first solar project in New Hampshire. They've done quite a few in Vermont, New York, and other states.
Okay.
So if people get out of these types of contracts, what is the reason? Do you ever?
So one reason you might want to drop out is if, like, say you had a building that was participating in this, but you wanted to put a solar array on the roof that would cover most of the load of the building. So at that point, you would probably want to drop out. My guess in that case, you would know that you were going to put solar on the roof 12 months in advance, and so you could provide the notice, and there wouldn't be any problem there. But I think that's the primary reason. Yeah.
Okay, does this take into account the fact that we are talking about putting a solar array on top of the fire department?
Yes. So Jamie has provided me with the numbers that you saw on the table, and he noted that you were thinking of doing that, and he reported that the load number that he gave me was post-solar, so that, I guess the solar array is not going to offset the total consumption of the fire station, and so the amount that he provided is the net amount that will, the net amount of load that will remain after you subtract out the solar generation.
Can I ask just, why would it be, say if we decided to put solar on another building, why would it be that we would want to drop out at that point? I'm not sure I'm understanding the rationale.
Yeah, so it's really important that these projects stay fully subscribed, that we have enough load to cover the generation that comes out of these projects. And so if you do anything to significantly reduce the load of one of the participating accounts, that could cause the whole group to be undersubscribed, basically, which has financial impacts. If you install solar or go through a deep energy retrofit or something like that, most likely we would probably want to drop those accounts if it's a significant reduction in load, simply because they're no longer contributing the load that we expected at the time the contract was signed. So that's the main reason. If there is remaining load after putting solar on, we wouldn't have to necessarily drop the account, but we might want to rebalance your share of the project just based on that, because the share of the project is proportional to the amount of load that's subscribed.
And so when we talk about the different participants, none of these are residential, correct?
No, for projects between 1 and 5 megawatts, the group members must be governmental accounts, so municipal accounts, basically. Once you go below 1 megawatt, you can bring in residential and commercial. But this is a 5 megawatt project, so it's at the upper end of the range.
And I'm just wondering, what's our potential liability, say if Encore Renewable Energy had some sort of a problem where the site isn't working properly or some other potential issue, an environmental problem or whatever, what's the liability of the people who are participating?
I would say it's zero, but that might be a question that you want to ask your town council, I suppose. Really, all you're doing here is sort of pledging the load from your accounts to enable the developer to access or to participate in this program and access the net metering credit. Beyond that, I don't think there's no formal tie between New London and the developer in that sense.
And so there's no subscription fee or anything like that? There's no potential cost to us down the road?
No.
You good for the moment? Okay. So obviously, we want to have the town attorney review this agreement before anything else. Do we have to vote on anything at the moment, Kim? No. Okay.
Okay.
So, you guys good with that? Moving forward?
Yep, we can put it back on the agenda once we get town council's opinion on it, and then you can decide whether you're going to go forward,
Okay.
or you can give them an idea if
Okay.
you're leaning towards it.
One concern I have is, what if the buildings we are supposed to be building in the next few years, and we put solar on their roof? It may be more than 2 buildings, so is that going to affect how we should vote on this?
So you're saying you might construct new buildings?
Yes.
Yeah, so those new buildings presumably are not on the list of 9 accounts, and so that wouldn't be relevant necessarily?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's good to know. Okay.
Is there any potential for us to add those buildings? Like, say we did have additional load for whatever reason, is there potential to add additional load into the system?
There could be, if some of the other subscribers from other towns were to drop out and we were looking for replacement load, we could come back to you and say, do you have anything you could add at that point? But at least off the bat, we'll have it fully subscribed, and so whatever load you commit now will be kind of set in stone until somebody drops out. And at that point, we could add more down the road, maybe. I should say we're also looking to do additional projects like this one going forward, so if that happens, there may be another opportunity to subscribe more accounts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you
Thanks
very
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, next up, Chief Lyon to talk about the SAFER grant.
Good evening. My apologies for the soggy documentation. It's a little inclement out this evening, so yours may not be pristine, and it's slightly older. From when we last met, we were cautiously optimistic that the SAFER grant, which is the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response grant, would come to fruition. As you may remember, we met with the Select Board in January to talk about our phased-in approach, and because the concerns about the funding of this particular grant, we felt it'd be prudent to look at hiring a single person this year with the hopes that the grant would open up, which yesterday it did. So it was kind of fortuitous that this meeting was coming about. I did think, although the select board at the time was in favor of our plan that we were looking at, there certainly are some financial constraints that the New London town of is looking at with various projects, and we understand that. The conditions of the grant have also changed. So when I proposed the grant, it was at 100% for 3 years. We're looking at 3 firefighters, and then at the end of those 3 years, then the town would assume those payroll liabilities and adding additional people. Now it's a phased-in approach like it was formerly. So currently, if we applied and the town of New London were recipients of this particular grant, the grant responsibility for the town would be 25% for 2 years, and then 65% the third year. Would then, after the third year, it would the town would be having to absorb those 2 additional full-time people. So instead of asking for 3, like we'd chatted about before, because it was approved at town meeting for that 1 person, we'd only be applying for 2 individuals. So this, we have approximately a month to submit the grant, and today our lieutenant and captain were looking at the different criteria and making sure that from an eligibility standpoint, we were hitting all the benchmarks, because it is a competitive grant. Although $360 million were allocated for the departments around the United States for staffing levels, we are competing against 34,000 other fire departments that potentially could apply for this particular grant. And it certainly is something that isn't a guarantee. I think when I met last time, there were only 2 departments, Hampstead and the City of Manchester, that were recipients. So I'm here tonight to see if the Select Board has any questions. Certainly, as I had mentioned, the terms of the grant have been slightly modified, but I still think that it's a great way to get additional personnel that we desperately need to fulfill our staffing levels that are needed to provide consistent and timely response to the residents of New London. Happy to entertain any questions.
I'll just ask a quick question, and I'll pass it to the 2 of you. So you're saying now that you apply, if you receive the SAFER grant in this go-around,
Yes.
you would be looking at, we've already approved 1 new full-time firefighter for fiscal 2026 at town meeting, then you would be looking to hire 2 more in 2026, or 1 more?
It would be 2 more if we go for the grant. If the plan was, if we had not received the grant,
Yeah.
then we would go for 1 person
Yeah.
in the next fiscal year in 2027, and
Yeah.
then another person in 2028.
Right.
So this would fulfill our needs for the foreseeable future. And I think, again, from a phased-in approach would make sense. It certainly, I mean, nothing's going to save the town money, right? But the concerns that we have, like before, are really adequate staffing and taking care of the on-call officers and the per diem people that have been taking care of people for many years. 25 years has been our operating model that's worked really, really well. And again, because of family constraints and time limitations with individuals with various jobs, people are just not available or willing to take off for their weekends or nights. And really the catalyst for this too, this isn't just a want, this is truly a need. And we would consider our full-time people and our fire officers, we respond to the majority of the calls. So out of our 900 to 1,000 calls annually, the general membership only responds to 150 calls on an annual basis. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize the number of calls that the general membership has to respond to make it palatable for them to be involved. And I've always said, you know, our officers are what makes it as easy as possible for the volunteers to be volunteers. Yes, they're compensated, but they come and, or not come when they choose or not. And so it was really our fire captain who has taken calls, and I keep on saying 7, 8 years. It's actually been 10 years in a row. And he said, Chief, it's great that we're taking care of the general membership, but who's taking care of us? So we are at, as I mentioned before, the boat's sinking. How do we plug the holes in order to provide the best service we can to the townspeople in a manner that, from a strategic standpoint, not responding with a full complement of firefighters like every other fire department does, is a calculated risk. That model's worked well, and this is the next phase in order to continue providing coverage without having to go to a full-time department.
Janet, do you have any questions? Rich?
So, I'll begin by stating for anyone who doesn't know that I was honored to be able to be a member of the fire department for 12 years and honored to serve under Chief Lyon for that duration. So I have enormous respect for everyone who works for the fire department, all of the men and women who put their time in. We've got a terrific group of people who do that. That being said, Jay and I have had an opportunity to talk a little bit today, and I expressed my concern, which continues, that when I look at the overall budget picture of the town, to be very clear, do I have any doubt at all that doing this would make the department stronger and better? None whatsoever. That being said, my concern remains that as I look at the trajectory of the town's budget, for example, over the last 5 years, the increases that we've seen, and when I look at what we have coming down the pike between the concerns about the Public Works Department, the concerns about the Police Department, and God only knows what else is going to come up, what I keep going back to in my mind, and Chief, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is that when I look at our surrounding towns, which admittedly are not quite as big as us, but essentially we have currently 3 full-time paid staffers, and none of the surrounding towns have essentially any full-time paid staff. My question is, why should it be that New London has to have, according to this potential plan, we would be doubling the size of the department over 3 years. And my concern is, when I look at the overall picture, not just the fire department, but the overall town, this budget trajectory is simply not sustainable. And so I'm concerned, I remain enormously concerned. And again, to be very clear, I appreciate everything the Chief is saying. I appreciate everything that you've done and all of the thought that has gone into this. Do I believe it would make the department stronger? Absolutely. It is simply a matter of the cost. And, when we talk about wants versus needs, it's also a matter of how much can we reasonably expect the taxpayer to pick up the burden. And when I look at the way the budget has gone over the last 5 years, I find myself thinking we're on a trajectory as I look at these various projects and thoughts, et cetera, we're on a trajectory to do that again. And when I say over the last 5 years, the budget has increased approximately 50% over the last 5 years. Again, that is just not a sustainable model going forward. We will price more and more people out of their homes. I appreciate the fact that this is generally an affluent town, but I also understand that we have some people who really do struggle to pay their bills. And every time we do these things, we are adding on to that burden going forward. And again, I appreciate the SAFER grant, but the concern I have there is if we get this grant, within a couple of years, the burden is on us. And I certainly would not be comfortable in any scenario that says we're going to take someone on because it's under a grant and then let her or him go when the grant runs out. That simply is not an appropriate way for us to approach our personnel. So I guess, Chief, my major question is, why is it that the other towns are getting along with a much leaner staff than we are? And again, I understand we have some major differences. We've got a college, we've got a hospital, we've got Hannaford, et cetera. And these are not insignificant things. But again, it's just a matter of the cost.
Totally understand and totally concur. No, I feel bad for the select board and having to make decisions, especially looking at the uncertain times ahead. But what I would say is we're not looking at the other towns. We're not, do we respond mutual aid? Absolutely we do. But we're relying on mutual aid as much as mutual aid's relying on us. And so, you know, I'm guessing, and I hate to pick on the Wilmot chief wearing dual hats, but my guess is that Wilmot is right around 80 calls, 100 calls this year, give or take. New London's approaching 500 calls. So we're doing a significant larger number than the town of New Wilmot, Sutton, Springfield, Sunapee. Sunapee has per diem staffing. I think they're right around in the $180,000 range for staffing for per diem. So although there's no full-time people, they do have some staffing levels, whether it be compensating the chief in Newbury or compensating the chief in Sunapee with a stipend. You know, we are fortunate in this area to have such a good mutual aid response and collaboration, because if it wasn't for all the towns working together, it would be really, really difficult. And yes, it is true that New London provides mutual aid more to the surrounding towns than mutual aid comes into town. However, when we had the fire a couple of weeks ago off of Forest Acres, it was mutual aid that assisted us. It was mutual aid that brought us the water. It was mutual aid that provided the personnel and apparatus. So I understand your point that other towns should be doing this. You know, I would refer to Lebanon, Hanover, and Hartford, Vermont. Without those three towns together, they don't have any full-time people in the periphery or contiguous to those towns. But when their staff of 5 per shift goes to a fire, it's all those volunteer towns that come to assist the city of Lebanon or Hanover or Hartford. And vice versa, Lebanon's going to go to Enfield or Canaan or Grantham. So it is a symbiotic relationship that we have. Quite frankly, I'm just excited that you're going to put back on your gear, since we need volunteers and you're coming back. So that's fantastic. But I do, you know, this isn't just a want. We're looking at staffing levels for a reason, staffing levels that are vetted. I'm fortunate to have some local residents that have inquired about the various intricacies that we have, and we have a pretty solid, I think, draft plan that the board's looking at, and so hopefully that will come out soon. You know, the problem with the fire service is we don't necessarily advocate for ourselves super well. You'll never hear me say, if the select board or the budget committee or the residents at town meeting don't support a fire truck, that we're going to be in a crisis situation, that people are going to die. But on the other hand, and you know, our poor DPW director became the director, and here's this building that clearly has some issues that any layperson off the street can look at and say, come on, like, it's just not a good situation. And do we want to have the fire department that is, I think, very well supported? We're grateful for everything that people do for us, the contributions, the support from town meeting. I'd hate to get to a situation where we're in crisis mode and we just can't respond to calls. Or the alternative to having full-time people or on-call people is just to do a general alarm. We'll just tone everyone out. And the issue was that there are individuals on the department that didn't show up just for the more emergent calls and couldn't participate. So if they can't come to the emergency calls that we have that are more serious in nature, an extrication, a building fire, a rescue, how can we count on them to come to a miscellaneous fire alarm activation? So those are the issues that we're faced with. And again, if it wasn't for the per diem staffing that we have, the dedicated group of officers, the live-in students for 8 years, we've had someone live at the station for 24 hours a day from basically September until May. You're getting the benefits of a full-time person. So without those things, we would have been in the same predicament because the number of calls that we're responding to, the demands for services, probably 8-10 years ago. So that's where I'm coming from. And again, I feel bad for the board to have to make decisions. It's also my job to advocate for the fire department and look at what the true needs are and how do we provide services in a timely and professional manner.
So Chief, if I can ask then, aside from the mutual aid component, which, you know, we're both completely in agreement as to the benefits of that to all of the towns that participate in it, the question remains for me, how is it that Sunapee is doing it, for example? How is it that Newbury is doing it? And understand that there are significant expenses that they're paying for per diem, et cetera. And I haven't had a chance to look into what their budgets are for their fire group. But Sunapee is, you know, roughly 3/4, I think, the population of New London. Newbury is roughly 3/4 the population of New London. And again, these are both departments that are making do without any full-time personnel. And that's my concern is we are going from right now 3 to potentially as many as 6. And my question is, how are we so different from Sunapee, for example?
You're putting me in a spot publicly that is difficult to have a conversation about other organizations.
That's fair.
And you know, from a professional standpoint, we've got to rely on these other departments. I'm happy to have a conversation offline, but to answer that question publicly is more difficult.
And I understand.
All the volunteer departments have always had an issue with recruitment and retention. And not to get into stories, but when I applied for the city of Nashua, there were 1,200 applicants for 8 spots in the mid-90s. Now, last year, they had a recruit class of 14 and there were 44 people that they had. So the police service has done a great job with bonuses and saying, hey, waving the white flag, we're in trouble. All these towns around us, they're in trouble. They are in the same predicament that we are. We're fortunate that we've put the puzzle pieces in place in order to continue providing services at a level that I think the townspeople expect. Now, we as officers sat down and said, what calls should we not go on? Do we not respond to a flooded basement? We could. Do you wait till the water's over the boiler and oil's leaking and next thing you know it's a hazardous materials? Do you wait until it's over the electrical panel? Or do you mitigate it when there's a foot of water on the basement floor and you can take care of it? And again, I understand you have needs, and therefore maybe the best thing to do is have us continue working on the grant. It's not due until July 13th. It's not like the first come, first serve. Everything is vetted by usually people in the fire service. And so I'm happy individually, or however you would like to vet it, to look at what our staffing levels are. Again, we're pretty close from releasing our staffing model and what that looks at in the future. You know, when we chatted, we talked about the changing demographics with the New London Fire Department. The other select board members have heard this. As far as in 87, we had 34 members of the fire department. 34 people lived in town. More importantly, 30 people worked in town. So when there was a call during the daytime hours, people could respond. Now, we have 43 members of the fire department, which is phenomenal. 16 now live in town. What does that mean? At night, people are traveling. I live up on top of Mount Kearsarge. I'm 7 miles away. I'm not making it here in 7 minutes. Our chief cop's going to be having a discussion with me. Like, it's just longer distances. And the issue is, out of our 9 officers, only 3 of our officers live in town. So from an on-call standpoint, people are coming from longer and longer distances. We have 1 officer that lives in a contiguous town to us, so they meet the requirements, but he's 20 minutes out. That's just not a reasonable time frame to go to a emergency response call. And then more concerning is, during the daytime hours, there's only 11 of us that work in town, including the 4 permanent employees. So Captain Matthey, Lieutenant Sarnovitz, Jenna Edmonds, and myself. That leaves 2. We have 2 police officers. So if Jeff Daly, like at the fire, Jeff Daly was on duty for the police department, he's not fighting a fire. Max Isley is another police officer. And then we have 3 retirees and a couple others that are handymen or own their own businesses or whatever the case is. This is not a great situation. This is not a sustainable situation. I would much rather put my finger in the holes of the boat to keep it at least from sinking than turn it into a submarine and be in a crisis mode when we're coming not for 2 people, not looking at a grant, saying we need 3 people per shift. We need 4 people per shift, because we just don't have the membership. And unfortunately, and as you said, New London, considered an affluent town, the individuals that struggle are the people that we're providing services to. And the general residents, when you look at the average age, this is not necessarily a young community. So, and we're grateful to have a bunch of retirees from other communities that retire here and are affiliated with our department. But we have individuals, because of work constraints, because of family constraints, that just aren't able to participate. In the past, we had a bunch of full-time people. Why be on call for $100 a day when you can go and make $700 in a 24-hour shift? It doesn't make sense. Or why even work on the weekends when, again, family's important, friends are important. People don't want to necessarily do this job.
Thank you, Chief. So I guess you'll move forward with applying for the grant. We'll see how it goes.
Well, what I would like is, if the board has additional questions, I want to make sure that everything's vetted. We are more, if we want to put time and effort into the grant, more than happy to do so. If we're recipients of the grant and the select board says at that point, we don't want to do it at this time because we have more information about what's going on, I just want to be very, very open and transparent.
Yep.
Like, that's my main concern. And it seemed disingenuous to receive a vote, especially, and I appreciate and respect Rich tremendously, and I think that as a newer board member, he's part of your board and ultimately should have a say to what we're doing and how we're doing it.
I don't think it hurts any to apply for the grant. And just like you said, if it comes through, it sounds like it's a pretty low chance, then we talk more about it at that time. It doesn't mean we have to accept it. How do you feel, Janet?
Since I'm the representative to the fire wards, I will express what I've said at those meetings, that I am concerned that, as you know, I recommended applying for one person for 26 fiscal year, so we wouldn't get 3 all at once down the pike. I'm still concerned that there would be two more people added to the budget. I mean, it's going to be a substantial amount. But then again, I know that you need more help. So I guess my feeling is, I don't think it would be a waste of time to apply for the grant. I think you should.
And again, if we receive the grant, when you look at the percentages, if we're recipients, 2 people would still be almost half the price, or half the cost, I should say, of having 1 full-time person in fiscal year 2027. That cost would continue into fiscal year 2028. It would be a 65% obligation on the town's part the next fiscal year, and it wouldn't be until 2029, is that right? Give or take, maybe 30, that the full exposure would be on the town.
Yeah, I guess that, you know, the downside, we don't want to hope that you don't get it. I don't think that's a good, a good way to feel about it. And who knows, by then, things may have altered considerably, and we definitely will need that many personnel. So, and the town is more than interested in maintaining that level of staffing. So I guess go for it, and good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, next, are there any public comments on anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay, so we will move on then to old business, review of the Horizons Engineering Inspection Report of the Public Works Garage. Sam? Yep.
So I assume you guys have all had a chance to review the document. Do you guys have any questions for me before I just kind of go into what's come up recently, or just as far as the asbestos report and such?
No, I guess we're looking for an update. Janet, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so we did get the asbestos report back the end of last week, and there is asbestos in the building. It's in the insulation in between the ceiling and the floor joists on the second floor in the garage space. I'm reaching out to one of the abaters to have them give us a price on how much it would be to remove. There is a concern in the aspect of we would have to deconstruct part of the building essentially to get that asbestos out of there just to tear it down. So I think that when I talk with the company that would be doing that, or a few different companies to get prices, there'll be a conversation about can we do that safely, or is this going to have to get wrapped into a bigger part of the project of like when we are going to tear the building down, now it gets added to when we would build the new building, because I'm not sure we can safely do the removal of the asbestos without, shoring up the building with, temporary lolly columns or walls or things like that, because it requires us to remove this part of the ceiling and part of the floor on the second floor, which is structural, obviously. So, as for the report goes, I think the report was good. I think it spelled out a lot of things in the building. I think just one of the notes is that in the bottom paragraph, it talks about how, you could do something with the building potentially as far as a truss system and such. With talking with the structural engineer, we talked about the aspect of that study that he did, or the walkthrough he did, is only on the roof structure itself. That doesn't take into account any other part of the building, and if it could even handle that and handle those changes and things like that in a building that, is already 100 years old and isn't quite fitting our needs. So I don't think that he was wrong in saying that by any means, but I don't think it would be an avenue that we would want to go down just due to the cost. He did also say that he thinks, in his professional opinion, that to do the work to make that a viable building again would probably cost more than the construction of a new building. And he's said that a couple different times. So I just want to kind of bring that to light, just in the aspect of like that bottom paragraph talking about that. So yeah, and that's all I have for an update other than Nancy will be officially in her office Monday. So we'll be kind of back open to the public, taking e-waste and all those types of things. And the crews have been in their lunchroom facilities area for a couple weeks now, and they've, feedback's good on it. It has AC, heat, and they've been comfortable. It's got the bathroom and everything, and so it's been all right. We've been making do, so.
And Sam, where is Nancy? Is she going to be at the sewer building or?
Yeah, so she's finishing up sewer billing right now at the sewer department. That is where she is. She's sharing the office with Chris, and then she'll be
Okay.
back over at the highway garage in the front
In the trailer.
office trailer. Yep, exactly. So.
Okay. Rich, do you have any questions? Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sam, before you sit down, just, can I ask, how long do you think it'll be before we'll get some numbers as to how much the asbestos abatement's gonna cost us?
I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. The engineer that did the asbestos study thought that just to get it removed would be anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. But that doesn't include if we need to do construction to make the building safe for them to do that removal. So, and then I think the bigger part of that conversation is originally I think we have it within the Public Works budget to take down the building. I don't think I could absorb a $30,000 to $50,000 asbestos removal in the budget and get it taken down. So I think that's a conversation once we have those numbers and have a little bit more information on that, so.
This does remind me of the late senator from Massachusetts, Paul Tsongas. His quote was, "The numbers are relentless."
Yeah.
And that's how it's feeling. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right. Move on to new business. Review of town meeting.
Right,
Yep.
Will, did you want to come up and join in the conversation? As we can see on the picture here, and those of you who went to town meeting on May the 14th, I think we had 396 voters, is that right, Will? I think that it went pretty well. Hopefully everybody, I got good comments back from the location,
Yeah,
right?
very good.
Will, what did you think as far as putting it on? And Will did a lot of the work arranging and talking with the college. Public Works did a great job putting the chairs and especially the floor mats, which are very tricky, to get the floor covered. So, I mean, I thought it went well. What did you think, Will?
Yeah, no, I thought it was great, and it's a good relationship building thing, and it turned out that way. And Amanda was thrilled that Public Works helped out with the chairs and that sort of stuff, and we came in under budget, and life was good, mostly because of Public Works helping with things and that sort of stuff that they weren't necessarily counting on. But so yeah, it's a great place to be, and we can hold 2,400 people there, and I would love to be there forever.
Okay.
No, it was cheaper than what the initial estimates were. We were 75% of what the original was.
And I think if you ever have to have separate rooms, like if we get over, what do we think, 600 we could have at the SAU in one room, which would be tight.
Yeah.
So if there comes a time when the town has larger numbers, to stay at the school would require satellite rooms, which would increase the cost because of the need for the communication between rooms.
That, and it's
So-
a technological disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. So while the
At which
college,
point we have to delay the meeting,
Yeah.
and go forward, and that sort of stuff.
right, the college eliminates that problem. So,
Yep. I thought it was great. And let me ask one quick question, is when we think of timing of town meeting, though, going forward, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think it works better when the students aren't there.
Yeah, we would split it and not do it in 2 consecutive days, and we would do the election the second Tuesday, and then we would do it, their vacation is typically that following week, which is actually a great thing for us too, because then we don't have to be standing there on the stage, having been up for umpteen hours and not able to think.
Okay.
And I was just going to mention that this year, unfortunately, again, because of our weather, we had to move Colby Sawyer's graduation inside. They were very concerned as far as occupancy numbers. And given if we have a fire detail, we can actually increase their capacity levels From 16, I think there was about 2,200 people in the building this year. And just to follow up on Will's comments, this year was the first year, at least in 8 years since my wife's worked there, that the town meeting was a different week than their spring break. Usually spring break is the same week that our town meeting is, which would be beneficial, because then you do have the complexities of students and closing down and all that other good stuff, or bad stuff.
So, just generally, the election and the town meeting typically coincides with the vacation usually?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I believe the school's probably already posted next year's schedule, so it probably would be a fairly easy lift to see if there are any conflicting schedules.
But even if it's not, it would be an easy fix just to do the town meeting the next week. Yeah,
Right, the town meeting can really be held almost any time. It's
Yeah.
Tuesday election cannot
Yeah.
be held any other
Well,
day but the
people
second
liked
Tuesday.
going out in May.
Right, yeah.
They liked getting out, and it was still light out and no snow on the ground.
Yeah, May
Just saying.
May is not ideal, but it is what it is.
Okay, and now we have to begin.
Okay, so as we all know, that meeting, once we held this meeting on May 14th, that meeting was not properly noticed, given that we did not announce the day and time at the March meeting. So this third meeting, this corrective meeting, must be held. And that meeting will only be to recognize that there was a defect in this meeting, right? Because the day and time was not announced in March. And so the meeting will be held to cure that defect. That's all it will be about. It will be not talking about any warrant article, not the warrant articles that we dealt with on May 14th, just to cure the defect. I recommend or suggest that you do that the June 18th meeting of the board. That will give time to notice, because we'll notice this meeting. It'll be a public hearing type meeting. And you can hold it then, and then have your regular selectmen's meeting after.
Well, and it'll be Michael having it, right? Because because it's a
He's there,
town meeting.
yeah.
Okay,
And what will we be voting on at that meeting? What, will we just be saying never mind?
No, we'll be talking about how there's a defect in this meeting,
Right.
the meeting I'm pointing at.
Right.
And that voters acknowledge that there was a defect, and they are accepting the results, so that the defect is cured by having this meeting. Recognizing there was a defect, a meeting was held that was defectively posted, and it's yes or no. Do we cure the defect?
And so we will vote.
Yep, yep.
but there's no opportunity to make any sort of motions to reconsider any of the other
Nope,
articles.
has
that-
nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah,
Should be turbo.
yeah.
We didn't get
Yeah, I've gone to these meetings, and
compared
they've
to the
been,
last
you know,
one.
it should
Yeah.
be faster even than that. Yeah, it should be less than 5 minutes.
We didn't get in trouble with the second meeting by not announcing the date, did we?
No, you can't do that at that point. It has to be at least 21 days later.
Right.
Because technically, you don't know you have a problem until you have this meeting. We knew before we had the meeting. But the idea is that a problem happens that you're not aware of, right?
Okay,
Do we want to have a
That's hardly-
motion
hardly-
to
So-
hold the meeting
June
to cure the
18th.
defect? Yep, you
Yeah.
should do a motion on that.
June 18th, 5 o'clock, right before our regularly scheduled selectmen's meeting at 5:30. Good with everybody?
We have a motion on that. Is that your motion?
That's my motion. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay, next. So Rich and I attended the meeting on Monday night of the Newbury Conservation Commission, where they were giving us updated information about the wastewater treatment plant up at Mount Sunapee. They've done so much work and research on reports and things that have been issued by DES since the early 90s. It was very, very informative. So the next meeting, there's an annual meeting on June 3rd at 10 a.m. at Mount Sunapee that involves we'll have the Commissioner of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, which is the state agency that oversees Mount Sunapee. Vail will be there talking about their operation management plans, and they have given a time slot to the Newbury Conservation Commission to talk about their findings. And the Conservation Commission plans to request that they consider putting in a new wastewater treatment plant, and they have an estimate that they're going to present to do that. They're asking the select board members from the 4 different towns that are in the watershed to be there at that meeting. They don't know if we're going to have a chance to speak or not, but I drafted up a statement that I think Kim sent to you both that I'll have ready and plan to read if it's possible. So if you guys just want to take a look at it and give me your feedback and make any changes or whatever you suggest, you can. I'd sent you the draft, but if you had any changes, just send them along to me or anything. And if you guys can be there, that'd be great. If not, it's okay. We're gonna try to get as many everybody here. If you can be there, please. This is really, really important. If you want to make any comments after attending that meeting, please do.
Yeah, I'll say this, the Conservation Commission from Newbury did a tremendous job. They gave a very compelling presentation that was very detailed and talked very explicitly about, what was interesting for me was I had assumed we were looking at a potential catastrophic failure that if it occurred would be a disaster for the lake. And instead, what I found out is that the disaster is occurring in slow motion right now. And there's all sorts of data showing the problems with what is leaching out of that area and eventually flowing into the lake. And as I said, it was a very thorough, I was enormously impressed that within the population that they have these people who happen to have expertise that really lends itself well to the very, kind of, nuanced, detailed, expertise that's required to understand this. And as I said, it was enormously compelling and also very disturbing. But happily, if you will, the costs are not actually that potentially outrageous that they were talking about to fix this problem.
Compared to what it would cost to clean it up.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yep.
it was truly one of these scenarios where, we can, and so the real question, to my mind at least, will be going forward, the state of New Hampshire, I can envision is going to be pointing at Vail and saying it's your problem. Vail will be pointing at the state of New Hampshire and saying it's your problem. And meanwhile, we have 3 towns surrounding the lake that it's really going to be our problem. And everybody's going to probably, unfortunately, spend more money on attorney fees than actually just coming up with a solution. But it is, I can only tell you that certainly I left there convinced that this is a very serious problem. The facility that was built was designed and built more than 50 years ago and has long outlived its usefulness.
Yep. Okay, excellent. Okay, we will move on to, unless anybody has any comments or questions about it at this time, okay. Next, appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. Everybody's got the list?
So we all have the list. We can go through them. These are posted online so people see them. Your list has the names of board members whose term expires in 2025. In some instances, folks have asked not to be reappointed, and in a couple of instances, we have new people that various boards are asking you to appoint. So we can either go board by board or however you'd like to do it.
Okay. And we have to vote on these.
Yes, so you will be
accept.
appointing these. They're all for 3-year terms.
Yep. So do we want to do it board by board, have a vote, or does it have to be per person?
Nope, you can do it by the board. You
Okay.
can do this whole slate, but it might be easier and for people to hear which
Okay.
boards are getting appointments.
I'm comfortable with simply approving the entire slate.
Okay. Janet? All right. Do you want me to read through the slate so it's in the record?
Nope,
Okay.
these are posted. It is part of the record.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
people probably have looked at it.
Okay. Make it easy. So I'll take a motion to approve all of the appointments for all of the boards for the upcoming year.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Got through
So
that.
there is one that you need to, there is not a name for, and that's the Tri-Town Assessing Board. We need one selectman. That is we work with Sunapee, Newbury, and New London, and so we have a rotating basis of a selectman and a citizen. This year, we just need a selectman. And their meetings are typically during the day, so potentially Janet might be the one.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with doing it.
Okay,
It's interesting.
all right. That good? Okay, so do we need to make a motion for
Yes,
that? or we-
please.
I'll make a motion to appoint Janet Kidder to be the selectman representative on the Tri-Town Assessing Board.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
Yes, thank you, Janet. All right. Next is the adoption of the finance policies that Lynn gave to us last meeting. Does anybody have any questions on any of those finance policies? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the adoption of finance policies for training differential, shift differential, police special details revolving fund, recycling revolving fund, fund balance, and recreation revolving fund? I assume we can do all of these at once? Yep. Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Okay, town administrator report.
Okay, so it would be in meeting minutes, but I haven't posted them yet, but as everybody hopefully knows, Ashley Sebold has been appointed as the new town administrator, and she'll start on June 5th. And her picture and information has been in newspaper, so people are getting pretty excited about that, so looking forward to working with her in June. Your next meeting will have Superintendent John Fortney. He would like to come and just update you all, as he has done in the past, on what's going on in the school district, so people should be aware that might be a good meeting to attend. This evening, I gave you a letter from Warner about their interest in talking to surrounding towns about cell service. So you haven't really had a chance to look at it, and I haven't really looked at it too closely, but apparently they have some issues with cell phone coverage in Warner. And so we can be thinking about whether folks here in New London experience issues with cell service, and if so, whether the town will want to join with them. So I'll put that on the agenda for June 4th.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any committee meetings, or reports?
The fire wards met on the 19th, and the chief noted that Karen Hoagland resigned from the board, and they will send her a letter thanking her for her years of service, and recommended that Kate Turcott, whom we've just appointed, and Bill Negnan be reappointed to the fire wards. The new utility truck is in service and has been lettered. The old one is being auctioned off. Regarding the ladder truck and tanker number 1, Chief Lyon pointed out there is a 4-year backlog of new fire trucks. Apparently, hedge funds are buying small fire apparatus companies, consolidating them, and then closing some. 2 companies competing for the same business may be owned by the same hedge fund. So this plays into the fact that getting a new fire truck may take longer than it normally does, because there are fewer companies to build them. The fire department is going to offer fire extinguisher training to the community. There was a discussion of interviewing candidates for the new firefighter position. The interviews will take place next Tuesday, and the candidates, they will meet with 6 of them. The company has new tables for the meeting room. These tables offer more space for meetings. 32 people can now be present. So if you all want to have a meeting, you might consider the fire department. And Director of Public Works Sam Clark is cleaning out the building and area where the smokehouse is. It will be much more useful for the fire department, and they are very appreciative that you're doing that, Sam. So that's all we have.
No other meetings, Janet? No. Okay. Rich? All right. Okay, we didn't have the meeting minutes available to approve, so we'll carry that out to the next meeting. One change we're going to make to our July Selectmen's meeting calendar is we're moving the July 9th meeting to July 2nd, and then we will keep our other meeting on July 23rd. And next regular Selectmen's meeting is Wednesday, June 4th. And Planning Board, Tuesday, May 27th. Memorial Day, the town offices will be closed. Rec Commission, Monday, June 2nd. Energy, June 4th. Citizens, June 7th. And the rest on down the way. I think that's it, right? All right. Motion to adjourn. Oh,
Before you do that, you
because
just,
we
you have
to
your
sign
signing
stuff.
thing,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And I have changed the picture, so if anybody wants to see any other pictures up there. I think that's my best side on mine, so. Right, that was kind of tight. Yeah, we'll stretch out next time,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
But I was saved by my, oh, yeah, I was saved by my microphone, so I was happy to have that.